Hello, and welcome to your online yoga classroom with Mr. and Mrs. Pose.com. This is a little what your online experience with us might look like. My location, the yoga teacher's location, may change from time to time, but generally we'll have two camera angles. The long shot like this so you can see us at full reach, and a closer side angle so that you can get a bit more detail on some of the poses as we're practicing them with you. This also allows us to see your webcam, to check your alignment and your technique, and give you verbal adjustments as needed. It's not mandatory if you feel shy about it that you share your webcam with us, but it certainly helps us build a relationship with you and make it a much more interactive experience. You can get your practice to the heart of your practice, I guess, a lot more closely as well. So we have another video that is actually about the technical setup of the online classroom, checking your audio, your webcam, your screensaver and your energy saver or power options. So I'll leave that for another time. But what I thought I might do today is go through some of the yoga props or equipment that we have available and that we use in our beginners courses as well as more advanced workshops. So the first thing we recommend strongly to beginning yogis is a good quality yoga mat. Now you can practice without a mat. In fact, our teachers do say that all you need is your mind and your body to practice. But certainly from experience with our students, to keep you safe, a good quality yoga mat that provides cushioning, traction, and a sense of space, both proportion, but a sacred space as well. It's a really good idea. If you're using household items like towels or rugs or even carpet, you can risk slipping and it also throws your alignment off. So the mat I'm practicing on today is one that we have available at mrandmrspose.com. You can get your mat from other places as well, of course, but we love this one. It's a 5.5 to 6 mil mat. It's also eco-friendly. It's PVC free, so we love that. And it's super lightweight and has a lovely dry traction. So we highly recommend this one to beginners, and I practice on one myself. The other yoga props that we might suggest are two what we call yoga blocks. These are EVA foam blocks that we use for various purposes to bridge flexibility, to check alignment, and to give other types of support during your practice. Now you can use household items like books. I've even seen a student use an upside down mixing bowl to keep him balanced and aligned. These sorts of household items do reach their limits though, and at some point during your practice, a couple of yoga blocks is a really great idea. The sorts of ways we use them, as I mentioned, are about bridging flexibility. For example, if we're in a pose called triangle pose, and I'm reaching up, in order to be able to access the pose, if I'm a little more tight, I can place the block at my ankle like that. So when I'm reaching out, I'm reaching long and coming down, I'm not collapsing in the underside body, yeah? So even if I'm a little more tight, I'm staying active and I'm able to relate to the block as my reach. And as you're practicing more and you're becoming more open, you can actually change the height of the block really easily, like this. Another way that we use the block, if we're coming into a pose such as hero's pose, which looks a bit like this with the knees together but the feet wide apart. Generally we sit the hips right down between the feet, but if you're a little tighter in knees and in hips, you can place the block between the feet like this, sitting those sitting bones back down onto the block. So it gives you a little extra height, puts your pelvis in the right alignment, takes pressure off knees as well as your hips, and it's just a lot more comfortable to stay here for a longer period of time. This is another way we can use the block. Even if you are more advanced, we do various things with the block, such as use them to support back bends, And what they do in these kinds of examples is allow you to stay in a pose for a longer period of time and start to let the body and the pose itself do the opening and the releasing rather than doing by force. So they become a more restorative support at that stage, even if you are quite flexible. So 2 blocks are a great idea at some point. The other item that is probably an equal number 2 in the priority is a good quality yoga strap. Ours are a lovely, tough, strong cotton, quite a traditional strap. They have 2 D-rings at the end. And we fasten by threading the end through both D-rings and then back through 1 D-ring so that it's nice and strongly fastened, yeah? You can also get them, I think, now with quick release straps, which is another option for you. You can find them at other locations. These are the ones we stock and use regularly. We can use them in a number of ways. For example, I'm coming into a pose called cobbler's pose, where my soles of the feet are together, knees wide. Come and do a class if you want to find out why it's called that. We can actually loop the strap around the feet, drawing it a little tighter, making sure it's down on the hips here. And here we're actually creating support for the hips. We're taking the grabbing out of the inner thigh, and we can even lie back and really create this as a restorative pose that we don't actually have some of the other muscles fighting us in the pose. So it's a beautiful supportive technique. The other ways that we can use a yoga strap is to shorten and check alignment. So where we're doing, for example, inversions or anything where we're using alignment of the shoulders, we can actually strap our arms, making sure to avoid elbows, strap our arms like this, so that when we're coming upside down, as we're building strength and flexibility around the shoulder area, we're actually keeping ourselves beautifully aligned with the strap. So even as you're more advanced, this is a really good way when you're working on a pose over a longer period of time to start to unpack it. So yoga strap, definitely recommend one of those. The other items that I've got to take you through today are probably more discretionary items. For example, our eye pillow. Now, we do Shavasana, or relaxation, at the end of all of our classes. It's a really vital part of any yoga practice. You take that time to drop in, to relax, and to absorb the work that you've done during your practice. But also it's about relaxing the body, mind, and breath in preparation for meditation. So an eye pillow is a way of accelerating that by cutting the light. You can drop into relaxation that little bit more quickly. Ours are also filled with a beautiful lavender blend, so they smell amazing. But it is a more discretionary item. You don't need to rush out and grab one straight away, but you can use, for example, your towel over your eyes when you're in Shavasana. But when we talk about an eye pillow, those are the kinds of things we're using it for. The other items that we do discuss and use regularly are yoga blankets. What makes a yoga blanket different from any other household blanket? Generally, it's the standard size and a slightly thicker thickness. You can absolutely use anything that you have at home, particularly initially, for this purpose. But over time, it becomes quite advantageous to have a standard yoga blanket or a series of yoga blankets, because when we're laying them and stacking them on top of each other to give support on the shoulders, for example, to create length for a neck, we need to be sure that we're creating the right amount of support. And so by having a standard yoga blanket, that's a lot easier to do. In addition, we can use it in a threefold like this as a support for the hips for poses where a block is just too high. So if I'm meditating in a comfortable, well, I'm in Siddhasana at the moment, but in a comfortable cross-legged pose even, you can see just by bolstering that small amount of height with the blanket, it's making me more comfortable. I can stay here for a lot longer period of time, but it's also giving that alignment of the hips. and supporting that lower back area a lot more readily. So even when we're doing actually forward bends, this is invaluable when you've got tight hamstrings. To give yourself that little bit of height under the hips will make those poses a lot more accessible. So yoga blanket is a really good idea. If you're starting out, use something you've got at home, and longer term, perhaps consider it as an investment. The last prop that I'll talk you through today is something called a yoga bolster, a rather large cushion like this, but it's made of very dense material so that it gives lots of support. Now, bolsters are used in not dissimilar ways to some of the things that we've described, but they're specifically more applicable to restorative work. So, for example, we could use it along the spine. I put it behind me like this. I take my 3-fold blanket and I use that as a pillow to support neck and head. And then I lie back completely. Perhaps my soles of the feet are together again. I lengthen my lower back, roll all the way down. Arms come out, palms up. You can see my whole spine is supported by the bolster. The blanket is giving me a little extra height. But what's actually happening is that I'm able to get that opening in the chest in a really relaxed way. There's no force, and it's just my breath doing the opening. And then if I remain here for a longer period of time, it becomes a really restorative, calming, and releasing pose. It's a lovely way to use a yoga bolster, always rolling out. And there are many other ways that we can use it that we can teach you about in our yoga classes as well. But you can certainly use maybe cushions, a rolled up blanket even, to get similar sorts of effects. But a yoga bolster over a period of time is a lovely thing to have on the Christmas list. So that's, I think, all I'll go through today for yoga props. Thank you so much for listening. To summarize, I guess, the most important thing for you to think about if you're starting yoga practice with us is to think about getting a beautiful yoga mat. Next, a block and straps, if that's accessible, perhaps bridging with something else that you have at home until you can prioritize those, and then the other things can come later. But you can come to mrandmrspose.com and get any of these items, or get them from your local supplier. We just hope that we see you at mrandmrspose.com for a class very soon. Namaste.